Good. I wanted that to be a nice signature.
Back in March, the federal government earmarked $8 billion in aid to tribal governments as part of the CARES Act. But as the communities waited for the funding, the number of COVID-19 cases grew. Indian Health Services reported just over 8,000 positive cases on May 20th, and the Navajo Nation has the highest per capita rate of COVID-19 infections in the country, higher than New York. But it wasn't until early May that $4.8 billion of the $8 billion started flowing to tribal communities, well after the April 26 deadline set by Congress. Treasury has yet to distribute the remaining $3.2 billion.
So it's leaving tribes in a position where we are fighting this virus with fewer resources than we need, but also in the dark, without having a clear picture of how much funding is going to be allocated to each tribe.
Look, the reality is that the Navajo Nation and other tribal nations need as much help as they can get right away. There's no need for delay and no need to portion out the money so that they don't get 100% right away.
Part of the delay in distributing the funds was over how to allocate the money across all 574 federally recognized tribes and determine who qualified for the funds. Treasury included Alaskan Native Corporations, or ANCs, in their calculations, which are for-profit entities. The decision to include the ANCs sparked lawsuits by tribal governments. In addition, there has been controversy over the formula used to distribute the initial round of funds.
It isn't really connected to the responsibility that tribal governments have to take care of their tribal members during a pandemic.
After tribes submitted all sorts of documentation to apply for the funds, Treasury settled on what some say is an outdated racial population number that is connected to a housing block grant formula.
We've got nearly 17,000 people, and based upon what they used, it was based on a formula that account for about 5,000 people.
A recent study by the Harvard Project on American Indian Economic Development concluded that this formula creates demonstrable inequity in the form of gross and frequent underrepresentation and overrepresentation of hundreds of tribes in the allocation process. The Treasury Department has not made public the amount each tribe received from the first round of funding. Researchers from the study obtained the data Treasury used and reverse engineered the analysis to determine how much each tribe received in the first round of funds. In some cases, the housing data indicated tribes had zero population, not reflecting their true population count as submitted by the tribes last month. This resulted in those tribes receiving the minimum funding of $100,000.
We all should be concerned that there's this sort of arbitrary allocation of funds going on when tribes are so desperate. Their economies have been devastated.
Newsy reached out to the Treasury Department, but they did not respond to a request for an interview. Treasury has again asked tribes to submit financial and employment information in order to receive the remaining $3.2 billion. Sources say tribal leaders were told Treasury expects to begin distributing the funds as early as June 5th.
Really, at the end of the day, the people who are going to pay the price are Indian people in our communities whose health and safety is at risk.
Angela Hill, Newsy, Washington.